Two matches, two players, two results that make absolutely no sense sitting next to each other. And now, heading into the Cincinnati Open, there is a real chance these two collide for a third time. But here is the strange part. Nobody can actually confirm it is going to happen. Both players are already in the draw. Both are seeded. Both are walking into the same 96-player bracket on the same hard courts in the same brutal stretch of the summer swing. And yet, right now, today, the official pairings still have not come out. So why does this matchup already feel like it is coming? Why does it feel inevitable before a single name has been drawn? Go back to the first time these two stood across the net from each other. Alex Eala walked out there with her chin up, playing loose, playing free. And she walked off having lost the opening set 6-0. Not 6-2, not a set that slipped away late. 0 game. A total wipeout, the kind of scoreline that makes commentators go quiet. Then, months later, everything flipped. Same two players, same tour, a completely different story. Eala came back, fought through 3 sets, and beat Alycia Parks in front of a crowd so loud the stadium practically shook. One match that looked like total domination, one match that looked like pure revenge. So, which one of these is actually the real rivalry? Here is the question tennis fans should be sitting with this week. If these two get drawn together again in Cincinnati, who really has the edge? Is it Parks, the player who once erased Eala without breaking a sweat? Or is it Eala, the player who has not dropped a single match on North American hard courts all summer? Because right now, somehow, both of those stories are true at the same time, and that should not be possible. There is something happening underneath this rivalry that has nothing to do with forehands or backhands or footwork, something that explains why one meeting ended in a bagel set and the very next one ended in a comeback for the ages. Most people watching these two matches think they already understand what happened. They do not. Stick with me, because by the end of this video, you are going to know exactly why this matchup keeps swinging so wildly from one extreme to the other. And you are going to know it before Cincinnati has even released its draw. But to get there, we have to rewind. We have to go back to where this whole rivalry actually began. Because the real story here is not about who is the better tennis player. It is about what changes inside a person between two matches that, on paper, should have gone exactly the same way twice. If you have not been following women's tennis closely these past couple of years, let me catch you up, because this part matters. Alex Eala was ranked 143 in the world, not top 50, not even close to top 100 in any way that turned heads. She was a name most casual fans had never heard, grinding out matches on outer courts while the sport's biggest stars soaked up the spotlight on center stage. 2 years later, she is sitting inside the top 20. That kind of climb does not happen by luck. It happens because a player starts winning matches she is not supposed to win against opponents who are absolutely not supposed to lose to her. And this year, that pattern exploded into something even bigger. Eala won her first WTA singles title at the DC Open. Let that land for a second. The first Filipino player, man or woman, to ever win a title at that level. Then, barely catching her breath, she walked straight into the National Bank Open in Toronto and kept the streak alive. She beat Alycia Parks. She beat Katie McNally. She pushed her winning streak on North American hard courts to 7 matches without a single loss. 7 straight wins. 0 losses. On the fastest, most punishing surface in the sport against a lineup of opponents who all had something to prove against her. And here is why that matters for the story we are telling today. Alycia Parks is not some low-ranked wildcard who wandered into her path. She is a legitimate American talent, a former Cincinnati doubles champion, someone with the game to give literally anyone on tour a rough afternoon. When Parks beat Eala in straight sets earlier this year, nobody blinked. It looked normal. It looked like the natural order of things falling into place exactly as expected, which is exactly what makes the next chapter so hard to explain away. Because a few months later, that same Alycia Parks stood across the net from a version of Alex Eala who barely resembled the one from January. Same player, same name on the scoreboard, but something underneath had shifted, and it was not just a number next to her ranking. This is not simply a story about one potential tennis match in Cincinnati. This is a story about whether the player who lost 6-0 in January still exists somewhere inside her, or whether that player has quietly been replaced by someone. Tournament organizers are now moving into bigger stadiums because they physically cannot sell enough tickets for the smaller one. I am not exaggerating that. It actually happened in Toronto. We will get there. But first, sit with this. Every time Alex Eala steps onto a court against a ranked American opponent right now, there is more happening than just a tennis match. There is a test running quietly underneath it, a test of whether her rise is the real thing or whether it is the kind of hot streak that eventually smashes into a player who already knows the blueprint for stopping her. Alycia Parks has already stopped her once. And the question the entire tennis world seems to be tiptoeing around is simple. Can she do it again? If we actually want an answer, we cannot just glance at rankings or seedings and call it a day. We have to go back inside these two matches, point by point, moment by moment, and figure out what genuinely happened out there. Because what you think you know about this rivalry right now is about to get a lot more complicated. January, Melbourne, the Australian Open, first round. Alex Eala steps onto the court with everything trending in her favor. Confidence in her shoulders, momentum in her legs, and then, almost before the match has a pulse, Alycia Parks rips off the first set 6-0. Not 6-2, not a tight set that slipped through her fingers late. 6-0. A complete, merciless erasure in front of a crowd that showed up expecting a fight and instead watched one player vanish for 20-something minutes. Really sit with that for a second. Eala did not just lose that set. She did not win a single game inside it. Parks broke her serve every time she smelled blood and held her own serve without ever facing a moment of real danger. This was not close. This was not some fluke of a bad day. This was one player putting total, suffocating control over another, and everyone in that stadium could feel it. So here is the first question worth sitting with. What do you actually do as a professional athlete after your opponent just handed you a bagel set on one of the biggest stages in the sport? Do you claw your way back? Do you shut down completely? Do you walk off wondering if you even belong on this court? Eala fought back. She took the second set clean. She dragged the match all the way to a third. Parks still closed it out in the end, taking the decider and the match. On paper, it reads like a simple, straightforward defeat. 3 sets, 2 of them going the way of the better player that day. But here is the piece almost nobody talks about. Eala walked off that court having proven to herself, if nobody else, that she could hang with Parks for long stretches, even after a start that would have completely broken plenty of players mentally. She lost the match. She did not lose the belief that she belonged in it. Now jump forward to August, Toronto, the National Bank Open. Same 2 players, same tour. A completely different atmosphere around both of them. By now, Eala is nobody's mystery anymore. She has a WTA title to her name. She has built a reputation as someone who does not crumble when the lights get bright. So when the draw pairs her with Parks again, the tennis world leans in, wondering if January was a fluke or the start of something Parks could exploit forever. The first set goes to Eala, 6-1, a statement, almost a mirror image of that bagel set from Australia, except this time it is Eala doing the dismantling. Then Parks answers back. She grabs the second set, 6-4, reminding everyone exactly why she is a player nobody wants to face when a match comes down to the wire. Suddenly the whole thing is a coin flip again. Everything both of them built through 2 sets is about to hinge on one final, brutal stretch of tennis. Here is the second question. In a decisive third set, against the exact same opponent who bageled you 7 months earlier, what actually decides it? Is it who has the sharper forehand that particular afternoon? Or is it something else entirely, something that has nothing to do with technique at all? Eala wins the third set, 6-2. She closes the door, she gets her revenge, in front of a crowd so massive that organizers had to physically move the match to a bigger court just to fit everyone who wanted to watch her play. So now we are left with 2 matches, 2 players, 2 results that sit on opposite ends of the earth. In one, Parks dominates so completely that Eala cannot even win a single game to open the match. In the other, Eala flips the entire script, closing out a third set decider in front of a record-breaking, roaring crowd. If you are trying to guess what happens the next time these two share a court, you have got a real problem on your hand. The head-to-head sits tied at 1 apiece. Both players have shown they are capable of completely dismantling the other. Neither result looks like an outlier anymore. They both look like real, repeatable versions of what could happen in Cincinnati, and this is exactly where most breakdowns stop. Most people will shrug and say it comes down to form, or matchups, or whoever is playing better that particular week. That explanation sounds reasonable enough. It is also missing something. Because if you actually zoom in on the conditions surrounding these two matches, something starts jumping out that has nothing to do with forehands, backhands, or serve percentages. Something that changes the entire way we should be thinking about a potential third meeting in Cincinnati. Here is what most people covering this rivalry are getting wrong. Everyone wants to explain the gap between that January bagel set and the August comeback using pure tennis logic. A sharper serve, better return positioning, some tactical tweak buried in her game plan. That is not what actually happened here. Look at the calendar again, closely this time. In January, Alex Eala was ranked outside the top 50, playing in front of a crowd that had zero real expectations of her. Nobody in that arena walked in specifically to watch her. She was just another name buried in the draw sheet. And Alycia Parks treated her exactly like that, seizing control from the very first point and never once letting it go. By August, her entire world had shifted. She was a WTA title holder. She was a rising star with a fan base that was multiplying by the week. She was someone tournament organizers were actively relocating to bigger courts because the demand to watch her had outgrown the space they originally gave her. Same opponent, same tour, a completely different weight pressing down on her shoulders. And here is the part that should genuinely stop you in your tracks. The match where Eala carried the most external pressure, played in front of the biggest crowd, with the highest expectations riding on every single point, is the match she won. That should not add up if pressure works the way we always assume it does. We are taught pressure breaks people. We are taught the bigger the stage, the more likely someone tightens up and unravels. Eala did the exact opposite. She played her best tennis of the entire rivalry in the one match that mattered the most. So what if the real thing that changed between January and August was never about tactics at all? What if it was entirely about her relationship with pressure itself? Picture it like this. Two runners, same marathon course. The first time, they run it completely alone, in silence, nobody watching, nothing riding on the outcome. The second time, same exact course, except now there are thousands of people lining the streets, screaming their name, expecting them to deliver. Those are not the same test. On paper, they look identical. Same distance, same road, same runner. But mentally, emotionally, they are two entirely different battles. That is what happened between Melbourne and Toronto. The tennis itself did not fundamentally change. The stakes did. And this is exactly where it gets interesting for Cincinnati. If a third meeting between these two actually happens, it will not unfold in the quiet, neutral setting of that first match back in January. It will be Eala walking in as one of the most talked about names in the entire sport, playing on American soil, with the media spotlight tightening around her with every single match she plays. It will look, in almost every possible way, like a repeat of the exact conditions that produced her win in Toronto. Which means the real question is not whether Alycia Parks has cracked the code on beating Alex Eala. The real question is whether the version of Eala who rises under pressure in front of a packed, roaring crowd is now simply who she is, the one who wins, not the one who gets bageled in the opening set of a match nobody expected her to even be competitive in. Because if that is true, a potential Cincinnati rematch stops being a coin flip. It becomes something else entirely. But a theory built on just two matches is still only a theory. Before we trust it, we need proof that what happened in Toronto was not a one-off, a lucky night, a fluke that happened to line up perfectly. We need to see this pattern show up somewhere beyond just this one rivalry, and that proof is already out there. Sitting in plain sight, buried inside results most casual fans have not connected yet. If you are still not convinced, look at what Eala did immediately after that win over Parks in Toronto. she did not slow down for a second. She turned around and beat Katie McNally in her very next match, grinding through a brutal three-setter that pushed her winning streak on North American hard courts to 7 matches without a single loss. 7 straight wins against tougher and tougher opponents in front of crowds that kept getting bigger and louder with every round. That stadium upgrade in Toronto was not some minor adjustment either. Tournament director Carl Hale came out and confirmed it directly. Organizers moved her match to a larger court because ticket demand had completely blown past what the original venue could hold. A player ranked outside the top 20 was selling out arenas typically reserved for the biggest names in the sport. Now here is the part that really matters for our theory. If pressure was still Eala's weak spot, this is precisely the moment it should have caught up with her. Bigger crowd, higher expectations, back-to-back matches against American players fighting on their own home turf. That exact combination has ended plenty of breakout runs before hers. Instead, her level climbed even higher. That is not luck, that is a pattern. And once you notice it, you cannot unsee it in every match she has played since that painful loss in Australia. Let's tie this back to where we started. In that first meeting, Eala walked in as a complete unknown, facing zero external pressure and zero crowd expectation. Parks dismantled her without any real resistance. In the second meeting, Eala walked in as a rising star with a title already in her pocket, in front of a record-breaking crowd with revenge sitting right there on the table and pressure coming from every direction. She played the best tennis of the entire rivalry. If the theory holds, a third meeting in Cincinnati is not just a coin flip between 2 players sitting 1 win apiece. It becomes a clash between 2 completely different psychological realities. Alycia Parks, who has already proven she can beat this version of Eala once, and Alex Eala, who has now proven pressure does not break her anymore. If anything, it might be what is building her. Here is something most coverage of this rivalry has completely missed. Fear rarely survives being beaten back once. The player who dominated you the first time often loses a piece of that psychological edge the moment you beat them in return. Not because the tennis changes, because the story running through your head changes. Eala no longer steps onto a court against Parks bracing for another bagel set. She steps on believing she has already done it once when absolutely everything was on the line. That belief does not guarantee a result. Tennis is far too cruel for guarantees. But it strips away the one thing that made that January loss so lopsided in the first place. The doubt, the uncertainty, the unfamiliarity with real, suffocating pressure. So where does all of this leave us heading into Cincinnati? The head-to-head sits tied at 1 apiece. The rankings favor Eala far more than they did back in January. The recent form overwhelmingly favors Eala, riding a 7-match winning streak straight into a tournament where she is now one of the most closely watched names in the entire draw. And if this theory is right, the environment itself, the crowd, the spotlight, the sheer weight of expectation plays directly into the version of Eala that has been winning all summer long. Everything is lining up in one direction. Which brings us to the one thing still standing between this theory and reality. The actual draw has not been released yet. Here is the honest truth. As of this video going up, the official draw for the Cincinnati Open still has not come out. Nobody, not the WTA, not the tournament, not Eala herself, not Parks herself, can confirm this third match is actually going to happen. So let's be straight about what we know and what we simply do not. We know both players are entered in the same 96-player draw. We know they are seeded closely enough that a meeting is genuinely possible in the early round. And we know that if it does happen, it will not be some neutral, low-stakes rematch. It will be Eala walking in with 7 straight North American hardcourt wins behind her, a fan base growing by the week, and a version of herself that has already proven, under real pressure, that she does not fold anymore. But whether the bracket actually lines up that way is still completely out of anyone's hands. Here is what we do know for certain. Cincinnati was never really only about Parks. Parks is simply the clearest test case we have for a much bigger question hanging over Eala's entire season. Is the player who thrives in front of massive crowds and high stakes matches the real permanent version of her now? Or is that January player still buried somewhere inside her, waiting for the wrong night to come crawling back? Because if pressure really has flipped from her weakness into her weapon, Cincinnati is just the preview. The real test is still coming. In a few short weeks, Eala will not be walking into some tournament in a different country, hoping fans show up to cheer for her. She will be walking into the US Open on American soil, with an entire country watching, expecting her to deliver on the biggest stage tennis has to offer. If we are right about her relationship with pressure, that should be exactly the moment she is built for. If we are wrong, we are about to find out in front of the biggest crowd of her entire career. Either way, you are going to want to see how this plays out. The Cincinnati draw could drop any day now. And the second it does, we will finally know whether this rematch theory becomes reality or just stays a fascinating what-if that never got its chance. So if you want to know the exact moment this draw comes out, and you want to be here when we find out whether Eala versus Parks round 3 actually happens, this is exactly the kind of story worth sticking around for. Because right now, nobody has the answer, but we are about to.